finished up a good meeting this morning. I went outside. My wife is sitting outside just looking at the birds, and my dogs are chasing bees. And it's like, this is amazing, and oftentimes we're flying through things, get to the next meeting. It's like, just slow down, just stop a second, just look around. Like, okay, it's a gray sky today, but I just texted my buddy, I'm gonna play tennis this afternoon, get some, sweat on. Like, things are awesome. It happens to be a new moon, which means that everything is gearing up to. I just made an awesome connection on LinkedIn for another potential job. I've got 2 other things, like awesome stuff brewing. So, yeah.
Glad I could start with you here on the new moon.
It's awesome to be here
with all the good stuff happening, all your good vibes. So that's great. So normally I start this by going, welcome to OnSolos. And today our guest is Brian-Logan Reid, BL as I call him, and many others do as well. Is, I would say, a serial entrepreneur, serial solo, as well as someone who's had quite a bit of experience in startups. And one of those startups, one of the more memorable startups that you and I have talked about many times, and we have often had conversations through the years, and quite a few frequently, more than ever. One of those conversations that had come up over and over might have been a company called HubSpot and your early experience there. And again, that was a very formal introduction, but we can keep this loose, brother. We could just go like that. We can wrap. So
I like it, dude.
Yeah, man. Totally. Where do you want to start?
It's up to you, man. It's interesting because I just read Pete Caputa's growth collaborative idea post last night, and I'm a huge fan now. And I saw that, and Mark Killen's doing the community-led growth, and I mean, this is where we're going. You know what I mean? And the folks like Pete and Mark and you and I and others are really recognizing, the old way's broken. We're part of the new thing coming, but just realizing that so many things have changed. Like we have flown by COVID. However that impacted you, it impacted the entire world, and we think we just went past it and like, oh, everything's open again. It's like,
is it over? Wow. Did we ever get an official? It's over. We just, it is over. But no, but it is interesting. Like your point is well received and well taken. Things are changing, and kind of without anyone saying let's change them, which I think is kind of a cool thing. I think that is the change. I don't know about you and your thoughts on it, but you're a guy who teaches me about go with the flow, be open, relax, the new moon's coming, all that stuff, man. And I'm always been, I would say, kind of a hippie, kind of one of those open guys, but I got into the corporate world, man. I changed. I put on my mask. Wasn't me. And that's why I love the solo stuff, because I get to be myself, which is nice at work, and that same person consistent through and through. And I know you're the same way, brother. So more about that transition in the economy and why you were excited about what Pete posted and all the other stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I recognize, there's a bunch of stuff here, so kind of the quick story, and I lean on this a little bit, from HubSpot and the 10, oh my goodness, doing that already, 12 years since then. I've worked with hundreds of companies and all different motivations and reasons for being and existing. And, the common thread is, I want to do something good, and that's great. But I also recognize the challenges, and I'll be really forthcoming. It's expensive to have American employees. Like, I recognize healthcare, 401k, all these things. And so I'm looking at companies that are stripping down and going like, I need to stay lean. I need to stay nimble. And I look at solopreneurs who are like, look, I need someone for this, and I need someone for this. And then the sum of that is outstanding. So why would I go build a brand new business? I'm not saying don't. I'm definitely not saying that. But I think definitely post-COVID, where people have realized like, wow, I don't want to be a cog in the machine anymore. I have some skills that I can offer and live a life that I want to live, where I can take my kids to school or not. And having those options that didn't really exist. Like, it wasn't that long ago. Just think about this, like 9 to 5 commute, like TGI, all that stuff was not like, that wasn't that long ago.
No.
And now here we are, like, I couldn't imagine people going like, I'm going to commute this whole back to work.
Nobody likes doing it now. It's like, you got to come back in. Like, no, I don't want to. But if you're in a corporation, and I look at what Elon Musk is doing at Twitter right now. Come back in. I can't say I totally disagree with that for something like a larger organization. I think it is come back in. I I don't know about you, but have you tried canceling a software service or getting anything done from a corporation these days? It doesn't work really well with everyone from home. It almost seems like if you want to go that route of a bigger company, you're probably going to have to go in. But solos have figured out like to survive, you have to figure out how to work like we work, how to work in a remote, flexible way, but also get stuff done, get it done. You, before COVID, were someone I admired for a network that you put together of former HubSpotters. You worked and collaborated with a lot of former HubSpotters. You worked with our company and our team. I wasn't a solo at the time, but we knew each other well. You knew the members of our team, and we collaborated on projects almost like a larger agency would, or something like that, to service them. So tell me a bit about that and how that got started and your experiences in that area.
Yeah. So long and short, and I was at HubSpot 2010 to 2012. I started the first version of HubSpot Academy. And at the time I joined, I was around, I think, employee around 100, and I left when
Mm.
it was 300. So, hyper growth was the whole mantra. And um, I remember I remember Halligan saying, it's harder to get into HubSpot than it was to MIT. And that idea of we are vetting the early people in this company. And so a lot of the Caputas and the Roberts, all these guys were there, people, excuse me, building this thing. And so I realized, when I left, the screening had already been done. Like, we have this amazing group of people that are talented in lots of different ways. We need to keep that out after HubSpot. I remember very, very briefly talking to Dharmesh about, the idea of, what do you do with alumni? Do you do meetups or stuff like that? And we did a couple, where he came in person, said kind of what's going on, but it didn't really take root. But the idea being like, look, we're all connected. We all got our different networks, our different skills. Let's just, we had we had an internal wiki, where we would just shoot ideas, beta testing and all that kind of stuff. Let's just do that, offline. So I started on Facebook, where everyone already was. It picked up quite a bit of steam, and it was awesome just seeing the collaboration. So I'd love to bring that offline now. It gets a bit harder. And to your point about meeting in person and things like that. HubSpot was always open to remote, but people do still get together in person. I think that I definitely want to touch on that because I see the value of being in person. I work remote now for 20 years. Before it was cool, and it honestly, it's lonely, dude. Being completely honest, it's great that I can sit here and my dogs are asleep and whatnot, but like I miss being with people and shooting ideas and whiteboarding and stuff like that. So I think there's a place for it too.
Yeah, let me ask you about that, it being lonely, because I don't know, maybe I'm a loner, right? Like, I'm a loner, I'm a rebel, right? But no, seriously, I don't, and I
Yeah.
do, I might have a different take on it because when I was in the company with an office with people in it, I was a small business operator, not a solo, but up to 10 employees. And I had to be there all the time, let people in, all that stuff. Right. So it kind of was great having the team there. We had a lot of fun, a lot of good times, a lot of laughs, good stuff. And it was easier to coordinate everyone in one room. And then we went to hybrid, which was it was difficult. This was pre-COVID. And the hybrid was like, this doesn't work as well. Right. Some of us work in the office. And we always said that remote person on their own was remote. They were remote. They were not connected to the rest of us. And then it became that we all were remote prior to COVID pretty much, but then definitely during COVID that was there. And it was like you were together because everyone was online, but there's still that aloneness unless you're interacting a lot on screen. So I have the benefit with clients of being on screen with them and spending a lot of time doing that. I don't feel I'm going to just give you perspective because I want to come back to you on it and see what your experience is on it. I don't feel as alone on it because I will go to the gym during the day. I know you do a lot of activities as well, and I'll see people. I'll do a few things during the day to get out there, and I actually get a lot of interaction on the screen. I became quite used to it. I want to get your take on that aloneness, because this is one of the reasons we have OnSolos, is to create that connectivity, not just do work on screen, but to connect as humans and talk about what it's like to be a solo and have that water cooler talk, coffee talk, whatever.
The
What have
coffee
you.
talk.
Yeah, coffee talk. I'm feeling a little verklempt. I'm sorry, I choked on that a bit. But go ahead and just, why don't you take
Good
it
old
from there and
SNL.
tell me about your
Wow.
experience
Yeah.
with it.
Yeah. So understand, I started working remote when I lived on Nantucket Island. I lived literally on an island out in the middle of the ocean. So I had to, I had to be alone, but recognizing I would always go to a client and meet at least once face to face so we could see, I tend to talk my hands a lot. I like to make jokes and get a feel. And that's one way that I like to build rapport. But I hear what you're saying. I think part of the challenge also is recognizing like this is not going anywhere. It's only going to continue accelerating in my view. So making the space for going to the gym or going grocery shopping or doing other things that are not work related, to have time with people that way. So I think again, it's one of the things that as I talk it out loud, I recognize like there are pros and cons to everything. Would I prefer getting in a car and commuting to an office? No. A couple times a week or a couple times a month, totally.
Right.
There is a sweet spot in there, but yeah, and I think we're going to be, one of those. I say as we're getting old. We're back in our day.
That's right.
So yeah, no,
that's the old. I had to walk 4 miles up the hill in the snow to work, to school. Now it's like, well, I had to drive in traffic and honk the horn and get in fights and then walk into an office with an angry boss and drink lots of coffee just to get through the day, just to drive home at 7 o'clock at night, have no dinner with my family and go right to sleep back in my day.
And then do it again. And then
do it again with
and
2 weeks vacation. That's it. Count your sick days in there.
So let me throw another kind of just macro thing that's going on, which is, all this built environment. You've got all these office buildings that exist that are now mostly empty. Like that is a big deal. Companies oftentimes, I worked in real estate a bit before I got into tech, and paying attention to the commercial market is really important because recognizing downtowns that were used to floods of people coming in, there's shops, there's food places, all that stuff is now like we have no clientele. It's not that our service is bad, it's just no one's here. So these businesses, what are they doing? Let alone what's happening to the actual buildings we're going to see, this is going to filter through the economy. I have no idea what it's going to look like. People talk about, converting it into residential. It's not as easy as it sounds. But that is a big thing that's happening. So companies are like, crap, I got this 10-year lease on a building. What am I going to do with it? Make it more attractive? Like, okay, there's only so many, beanbag chairs and video games systems you can set up. People don't want to come in. What are you going to do? So I don't have an answer to that. I would love to know what you think or others think, because
that's an interesting one. I can tell you the building I was in was on a university campus, University of Delaware, kind of on campus. And my landlord was a fantastic guy. And a fantastic company. It was a beautiful, like multi-story old stone building from like the late 18th century. It's a beautiful, beautiful place with a lot of history. They're renovating that into residential. And that's why that was like everything aligning to, hey, let's do OnSolos. Was just like, okay, this is where it's going. It's even happening in my building. It's amazing and cool. And he's going to probably have a lot of success with that building because it's a university one. But you're right. Not all spaces are that magnificent. They don't make beautiful lofts. What are you going to do with them? Interestingly enough, I'm going to be speaking with Ed Marsh, who you also know on the solo. He's an incredible solo genius guy. And I know he helps out people with spaces like that as well. So we'll have him on, and I'm going to make sure I ask him a little bit about that, because he probably has, Ed has a lot of answers, and that's probably one he'll have a good outlook on. But I've been fortunate enough to work on some project with him, and he's got a group of talented people who are working on those types of projects. So it is interesting. And I know you're also a very creative person, right? We talked about this, like being creative, being a solo who's creative, and like being analytical and creative, right? And going into these projects with a lot of big ideas and having a lot of upfront value. And that's very different as a solo than coming in with a big idea, a lot of enthusiasm at a job. Tell me about the difference between someone who's wired like you, who has that creativity, who has upfront, like immense upfront value, and then also can say, hey, what's those experiences like side by side, and what do they look like for you typically?
Yeah, I think the thing that I'm starting to focus more on is recognizing everybody has different goals, and I always start any engagement, any conversation, like, what are you trying to accomplish? And sometimes like, well, I need more leads or business or revenue. And it's like, okay, once you get all that, what happens then? And they're like, and that's normally what I'm trying to get at, because we can all figure out ways to make money, honestly. Like, that's not to say it's easy, but once you figure that out, it's like, okay, what are you actually doing beyond that? And so I think part of that question, of course, is, am I talking to the right person? There's decision makers and influencers, and you think you're talking to the right person until you realize, well, actually, our VCs are like, oh, okay, I actually need their input too. But I don't, it's interesting. I don't want everything to be focused on goals. You know what I mean? Like monetary goals and growth and things like that, because growth I'm good with, but I think part of, at least for me, one of the things that I took away from COVID was a recognition, like, our time is limited on this earth. What are we doing? Are we having fun? Are we making space and time for the things that actually matter? Or am I just constantly running to the next thing? Like, getting a promotion, getting more money, buying a bigger house, like that constant chug, chug, chug for more. And it's like, when do you stop and enjoy it? And the narrative currently, at least in the West or in America, is you go to school, get a job, buy a house, retire at 65, and hope you have all your wits about you and all your joints still intact, and have fun then. It's like, I'm on my way out then. Why don't I have some fun in the meantime? So that's something my wife and I have been focused more on, which is, I'm not thinking about retirement, but like living our life now. If we take 6 months here and take our kids, or when we have kids, take them around and enjoy life throughout our careers, not just at the end. So I never asked you about that. What are your thoughts around that?
Well, I have thoughts around that, and thanks for asking. I didn't consider things like that for a long time. I think earlier I said, hey, I was a hippie. I was like this laid back, kind of go with the flow, surfer, all that stuff, right? And then I had almost someone else's dream, like the dream you're supposed to live, of the corporate world, and just like make money to make money, have a startup to launch it. And now, like, I've become, I hate to say it, but judgmental of that mentality, even though I possessed it. And I don't think I learned the beauty and truth of the other way until I worked with a sales coach, and who became my mentor. And also another individual named Carol Mahoney, who is going to be on the podcast very shortly. And she has a book coming out where it's, I can't remember the title of it, and she's going to get mad, but you can look her up. She's got the title, but it's Buyer First. Actually, it is Buyer First. And Carol always had a saying, it's not about you, and think about others. And my sales mentor taught me a lot about asking meaningful questions. And we worked together multiple times. And I think the second time we worked together, it got into working more with my team. And it actually had me consider training on sales. And a lot of the questions when we would do that would be like, hey, what are your goals? And it wasn't like your financial goals. Like, what do you want to do to motivate people? It's like, what do you want to do? What is it? Do you want to go to the video game conference? Do you want to be a streamer? What is it? Like, all sorts of stuff would come up, and we would align the goals around that. And people became motivated. They didn't necessarily stay at the company, but I was happy for them because their goals were fulfilled. And that made me feel good. And I started to recognize, this makes me feel good. Now, is that going to be to build the next HubSpot? Hell no, but I don't want to do that, because I don't know if that is a good long-term goal for a lot of the people I'm around, to be at some big company. And like you said, a lot of HubSpotters did leave, and that's great at HubSpot. I always maybe don't like that, because I love to have selfishly this group of original people there forever, because they're awesome. But for them, it's great, because now we have relationships outside of it. And that, being around that company has taught me a lot. But in that mentorship and learning on how to ask questions, even of the prospects and people you deal with, like, well, why are you doing this? And they're like, well, I want to make this much more money next year. It's like, okay, what happens then? We would ask the questions on a website project. So we have to understand, like, what makes you tick? why do you want to change your website? I want to make more money. Okay, why do you want more money? And a lot of times when you continue to go and find out more, often it would be like, I want to make more money so I can retire and spend more time with the charity I work with. And then the question would become, what do your clients look like now? Can you get paid to help people in that way today? Or I want more time off and more vacation. And to me, ultimately, it's like all paths lead to a point. And it's a great question you asked. That is actually why I'm excited to do OnSolos and work with solos, because I believe that a lot of people could be in similar situations chasing the wrong dream. And I was there a couple times in the corporate world. I got to the top of the ladder. I didn't like the view very early. And with the startup, I was chasing a false startup dream. No one was going to buy my company. It wasn't a kind of company that anyone would buy. And I'm here pounding away for what? So you can have those, what are you going to do when fulfillments in the here and now? Like, I always want to do podcasting. You and I had talked for years. Let's do a podcast. Let's do a podcast. Let's do that. Now we're doing it. We're actually doing it. It's like, oh,
I love it.
I would love to play tennis during the day. You're doing it. So for those reasons, those are my thoughts on it. And I've seen a lot of people do it successfully, and you're one of them. And there's going to be plenty more we're going to talk to.
I think one of the things to recognize, and we talk, dare I get into this rabbit hole, and we talk about the matrix, a little bit, and those that are plugged in, and once you kind of you take a certain pill and you kind of see behind the curtain, and you realize, like, there are a lot of people that are just plugged in, and they're okay with that, and it's not my duty or role to try to get them, persuade them, or tell them that there's this other thing. Not at all. But if someone's like, hey, I see what you do, can you tell me about it? It's like, absolutely, I'm happy to discuss whatever. And it's only, I'm sharing what I'm doing. That's it. I'm not telling you what to do. I share what I have, and if there's some value in that, great. If not, no problem. I'm definitely not one to hear. I say this gently and delicately, but I grew up in a military family. So my dad was 4th Recon Marine. There's other guys that train Navy SEALs, and my brother is now a colonel in the Marines. So I have that thing.
Hierarchical, like that's not solos. You don't go solo in that world.
No.
Yeah.
The creativity and thinking outside the box. But recognizing, like, there are people that are plugged in and that they find their purpose in that, and that's great. But there are also people that are like, hey, I'm curious, what's it like over there? And I'm happy to say, look, I build this thing. This is how it works for me. It might work for you, but you won't know until you try, really. But oftentimes people are just, I don't know, man. I got to be honest. Like, there are a lot of different things. The culturescape and expectations, and parents and colleagues are all kind of say, hey, what are you doing? Get back in line. Get back in line. That's
right.
Like,
get back in.
No. I got this. I got that. No. You should. It's like, wait a second. It's my life. Remember this. I'm like, no, I want what's best for you. Like, well, what's best for me is this. Well, that is constant. I got a quick kind of shout out to my wife, who built a yoga studio, which was awesome. She was international relations. She did the corporate stuff, nonprofit. And then she's like, no, I love helping people be healthy and start a yoga business. And her parents were just not, they're like, no, you should be corporate. And she's like, no, I'm doing this. And I watched that friction, and I watched it myself. My mom was a teacher. My dad was corporate America. I'm like, I want to be able to do my own thing. And they're like, no, you should. I'm like, wait, this is really hard. And I know people listening, and you and I talk about this all the time. It's hard because we're so, I don't want to say we're so few, but we need to help each other out. We need to support each other because, we get how challenging it is. And I say this often too. It's not like, especially like my folks, they do want what's best. It's just, they don't know what it's like to be doing this stuff on my own, and they're like, no, you should. I'm like, I get it. And let me talk. And they're like, okay, let me learn more. And that's great. But I recognize it is a persistent challenge. So, yeah.
Well, I was talking to another solo who is a tradesman, who I recently spoke with, someone I know here on the ground. And there was a bit of the conversations like, like this is good, but I get resistance even from my wife. And if I try to tell her, like, here's what I'm doing, why, and the money, like that can happen. Even like, it's great that your wife gets it and she's done it on her own, but solos
Right.
even face it at home. And it's almost like you
Yeah.
need, like, maybe it's like I say, sometimes being a solo is like the Instagram life. Like, look, it's great. I'm a solo. Then you see the pictures and all the good stuff, but you don't see the at home and some of the other challenges you might have
Yeah.
where it's like, you know, it's not a steady paycheck all the time, but it could be different bits. And like, I saw a post recently by Max Trailer. If you know Max, he's
Sort of,
helping
yeah.
consultants out right now. He's a great guy. He is a total champion like you. I know you're a lacrosse champion. He's a paintball champion. Um, and he posted recently about the amount of sales time he has, right? And Carol's writing a book about co-selling. So, but you have to pay people to help you do this. So if you go, hey, honey, yeah, I know, like, I got ice cream the other day, and it was like I've been getting it a lot lately. And it might be $150 a month of ice cream, but that's what I kind of do. And I go out and do it. You're kind of laughing, but maybe you know more about the
It's all
story.
good.
But
No, it's all
but
good.
it is good. She's not gonna watch the podcast. It's so
Fine.
it's okay.
You're safe with me,
So
dude. It's all good.
yeah, the world can know, and she won't on this one, but it's fun. But it's like and I get her world, right? It's safety, security, right? Much like you say with the parents and everyone else that it's like I get it, it makes sense. But go and try to with a solo, you have to get buy-in to get help from a Max or a Carol, right? And that's sometimes hard because you're going to have to write that check out of an account that is almost a family account, right? It is something that you see frequently, and you have to talk about what that's going towards. And those checks, you can feel in your gut, this person's going to help. I know it's going to work. And you've done the vetting, but it's still, then it's not like I'm going out and get an ice cream. It's like, I'm going to spend a few $1,000s and bring another solo or another person on to help me with this. It's like, well, where are you going to find out? Well, the money might not come right away. I'm improving my skills. That is a challenge. And those things are worth it. I think there is an intermediary step, and I think solos kind of getting together is one of those where we can talk beforehand, and then you can say, okay, build that trust and hire that person. But those are some of the challenges we have with being understood and not being understood. And you can face it at home every day. You can face it at Thanksgiving when everyone's talking at table. You're like, hey, I want an announcement. I'm going solo. I'm doing something else. I'm leaving my corporate job at several $100,000 a year, or maybe 100, whatever it is. I'm leaving safety, security. No, I'm not going to have benefits. Good luck getting those. All of it, right? Why are you doing this? And and then the leap happens, and darn well they're going to be correct. It is going to be tough. So it's not like you can say you're wrong. You can just say you're correct, but I'm taking this leap anyway.
It's interesting though. I mean, I was just let go relatively recently from a role that I thought I didn't see coming, honestly. And so the idea of stable income and health insurance, all that stuff flew out the window. And I was like, that's the last time that I'm not either going to be prepared or I need to have something else going on, because talk about this stability and lack thereof. Like, it's great to have the stability. It also means you need to stay in your lane and don't disrupt feathers and do that's how you stay in that thing. But I think for people like you and myself, I like thinking outside the box. I like poking holes in things. I like testing. I like living life. You know what I mean? Because
Yes.
I want to be involved in something that's bigger than myself and contribute to this. So being on the podcast, talking with Caputa and talking with Kalen, it's like these bigger kind of things. That's where I get more passion and energy from. So I'm definitely not, I don't know if we're okay to swear. I was a hockey player, so I don't want to poo on anybody's dreams of corporate and grinding through the corporate ladder.
Yeah.
I think that's great, but I also think that all of this stuff is changing. The idea of a 4-hour work week, we're starting to see shortened work day. Like, all these things are starting to get reassessed, and the way that I think that I can have control is by doing my own thing. pulling you on a website project, pulling someone else on to help my Google Analytics, someone else. Like, that's how I see building stability. It's going to take time and it's rough. And right now it's still in that, pretty volatile stage, but over the long arc, it's going up in the way that I hope. So.
Yep. And Pete Caputa is a person who talks about focus. In fact, the other day he posted, "Hey, I was on Joe's podcast, and Joe told me you're the most focused person I know," which I replied. I also said, "I love you too." And both were true, but Pete is the most focused person I know. And he has stressed focus, and that's hard for solos at times. That's one thing that's hard. Often we're creative. So the focus becomes, we're not fitting into that hierarchical mode. So we do go down different paths and lose focus. But the beauty of it, what you just said really rang a bell. What you just described in your work was almost like being a general contractor. And I keep going back to the trades. And when I was talking to my friend the other day about being in the trades, he says, you want a craftsman to do this work for you. He goes, and if you want just the cheapest, or if I'm here to do the best. And I said, oh man. He talked about all the competition of lower skilled people coming and doing the type of work he does in the trade. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this sounds like websites. You can have you come in on price, but you have to ask the question, do you want the best? You just talked about all those specialists. I think of Pete Caputa with focus. You focus on a vertical and a trade skill. Let's face it, this digital world with solos, we are tradespeople in the way I see it. I don't know how you see it, but you could be that general contractor. You could have done several of those trades and then said, all right, I'm ready to go general and have multiple experiences. Or you can go deep and be one of those tradespeople. A website person is a tradesperson. A designer is a tradesperson. We don't talk about it that way. There's no formal trade organization for it, but maybe that will change. Who knows? But let me know what you think about that concept overall. Because I know you love craftsmanship and the finer things, great things in life and quality.
Honestly, dude, I love that analogy, the GC. Part of the loving experience I had with my wife in early marriage was building out the 2 yoga spaces in the basement of a 150-year-old historic building in downtown Medford Square. That was a 2-year project. It was amazing, but we learned very quickly about the difference between GCs and quality of quality of craftsmen. I think what you are touching on is awesome though. Like, recognizing a GC is meant to oversee everything. Like, he or she might have experience in doing all that, but the real value is being able to put people in the different spots that are necessary. I have mowed lawns, but I know someone that knows landscape design. I can build a stone wall, but I know someone that builds stone walls that last centuries. Like, I'd rather have that person doing that and pay them what they're worth to build the best thing that I can afford versus getting some crap that's going to fall over
that's so on target. And when I was talking to my friend, it was exactly that I talked about. And I think I always thought of this with website projects. I have a guy who does the landscaping here, and he offered to do I have a beautiful stone patio with a stone wall. It's awesome. And he didn't do it, but he wanted to do it. And I love the guy. He's done a great job on everything else. I said, do you have a recommendation? He gave me a recommendation, and the recommendation he gave me, the lady said, he's fantastic. I said, well, what makes him so great? She goes, well, he did it the first time and didn't do it right. So he did it for free the second time. I said, oh no, not with stonework. So the next guy who came out, we're in Amish country. He was a Mennonite man, a stonemason, several generations. He came out and I said, I want you to line item your thing. He said, I'm not doing that, pal. You came on a reference. I said, okay. I drew it out on a piece of paper, like you said. He came in, did it in a day. I paid top dollar. He did it quick. I paid a lot. It is probably the thing I love most about my house and my property is that. So there is something to be said for that. And I'm so glad the skilled master craftsman came in and did this work for me to enjoy. And I think of those analogies and I think of these experiences as, we apply it to traditionally not trades, but there is something about working with the best. And I've worked with you, and I've worked with others who are the best at what they do. And those projects are fun. The clients are happy. The outcome is positive. Compared to maybe working with a large group, it might not work that way for the people. And that's okay. Like you said, there's different stuff for different people.
Yeah. Something that I want to touch on, and it's important because I recognize that, not everyone at any point in time, regardless of the current kind of economic climate, can pay top dollar for things. And I recognize, it's challenging sometimes. I see people paying for things and then realizing like, oh crap, now I realize I should have paid top dollar. And that happens. Like, look, it's happened to me, I know what that's like. And for me, at least, it's going through that learning experience to realize like, okay, so before I do that again, let me, make sure I'm assessing the options. When we were back at HubSpot days, when I was running HubSpot Academy, I was running basically training sessions using the HubSpot tool, teaching new customers, but also almost new partners, how to do inbound using HubSpot. And oftentimes, a lot of the partners would come in and they knew what marketing was. They knew inbound. They were flying through the course, but then they became, in essence, competitors of like, okay, we're going to offer cheap SEO. And they're like, hey, I got my HubSpot certification. I'm ready. Like, I'm an SEO now. It's like, not quite. You got the certification because you passed the test, but, and then they're out there pitching SEO services for $25 an hour. And that's not what, at least SEOs in this country, or the ones that I've worked in, are charging. And so part of this idea of knowing what you're worth as a solo is important. That again goes to like, how do I compare my skill set to someone else's when it could be vast? When someone's like, hey, I need SEO help, and they're like, okay, how much? It's like, it's not how I work. Like, there's much more to it than that. And they're like, well, that sounds expensive. It's like, you get what you pay for, So something
I think
to
that's
consider.
What's great about having a network of skilled, masters of craft with this type of work, because you probably are not going to recommend just a friend for friend's sake. You're going to recommend some type of work that you respect in this role. You're not going, if you're putting the quality of work into your projects, the last thing you're going to want to do, or at least I'll say the last thing I'm going to want to do, let's flip that. The last thing I'm going to want to do, if I'm putting all this quality in, and I might refer a friend, but that's a friend I've worked with and have seen the quality of work. There's someone I know how well they do. And if it's not someone I know, I say, I heard this person does a good job, but I can't say they have. But it's typically going to be referred to another person who has integrity with their work and wants to do a good job. I think that is the key to solo work. It's not like, oh, I have an affiliate link here, I'm going to get paid 5%, follow this link. That's okay. Networks are good for that, but that shouldn't be the primary driver. Money for the sake of money. You're here to help people. You're here to put a quality project. And you touched on a good thing. People might not have the budget, but I know you're big into also coming in and finding out what the needs are, doing a needs assessment, seeing where the things are to guide people on what they might need in a trusted advisor capacity. How about you just kind of talk about that a little bit? Because that's a real interesting area that you've enlightened me on.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I learned all this from Dan Tyre and Mark Roberge at HubSpot, the sales training that I'm sure had an influence on Mark as well. But the idea of consultative sales and recognizing, not everyone's a fit for what you have. I know Pete is awesome at this. In sales, saying no is hard when you've got checked off all the boxes, everything lines up, and just for something it's not a good fit, to be able to step away and say, no, this isn't a good fit. And the only real way that I understand for that to happen is to ask a lot of questions, is to really get to the root of what the person's challenges are, and be okay if you can't fill them, if I can't fill them. Realizing like I can't solve everyone's problems. I'm not trying to, but what I can hopefully do is in that discovery, learn about not just your business and your goals, but like maybe I know someone that can help. But part of that process gives the client and or the person, time to really flesh out what they really need and what they dare I say want, because it's, again, sometimes they're tasked with, hey, we need to redesign our website. Well, why? I don't like the color purple. Okay, is that it? It's like, is it driving any leads? When was the last time you closed business from it? Oh,
it needs a more modern
Maybe
look.
We should. I saw this other site. It looks like Netflix, but like,
yes,
they all look like Netflix. No, but recognizing like part of that discovery process, gives you fodder to say, hey, I think I can help here, but I can't help over here. I know someone, but this is what I can help you with. And they go, wow, this is really refreshing. And I remember this so clearly. I did have to, not say it again. I have a little ties, a little bit of a tie with HubSpot. So I had to get my wife's yoga business on HubSpot. I just had to go through the process as a third party buying. And our rep, who I honestly don't remember, but was consultative to the T. It was like, hey, here's your challenge. Here's what we're going to do. Here are the things you need. You don't need this. And I was like, this is amazing. Every phone call was valuable. Every email, there was something. And I'm like, this is what sales to me should feel like. Like, I want to get a call from the salesperson because he actually understands my challenges, instead of I'm chasing people and trying to get responses because they're just trying to sell me their crap, instead of like, wow, he actually understands. And he's selling me, or he's pitching me, he's suggesting a product that's not even his. He actually understands, he's aligned. And that's something that I try to do. Honestly, I'm not always successful, but it's something that I continue to strive for. So.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. You're an incredible helper. You're an incredible teacher. It's so good to work with people where you can learn together and take on things together. And brother, thank you so much for joining me today on a great conversation as always, and hopefully many more. I would love to just keep having you back, man, for more jams and to talk, because the topics are endless with you. And it's always a good time. And more than that, I think there's always a lot for the solos out there to learn from these conversations. And, we're forming a community as well on this, and I'm going to give you an invite to that, and, have you come in and mix with other people who are sharing the same life, so we can all help each other out. So
Awesome.
Brother, thank you so much.
Awesome. I love it. And happy new moon.
Yes, man. It's a new moon and a lot of new stuff happening. It's beautiful.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, Joe.